our series. So if you would open your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter number 9. Ecclesiastes chapter number 9. If you don't know where it is, go to Psalms and then a couple books after that. Ecclesiastes chapter number 9. So the next love language that we're going to be speaking on is quality time. When you took the survey and one of your high numbers was quality time, then this is you. If your spouse's love language is quality time, then you really need to pay attention because this is a unique one. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter number 9 and verse 9. So Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 9, it says, "Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of thy life, of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun all the days of thy vanity, for that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun." So, folks, I know this says live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of thy life, but we need to live joyfully with our spouse. Again, if your love language is quality time, then you need to live joyfully. If your spouse's love language is quality time, then you need to live joyfully with them. And so, again, looking at quality time. And then one other verse we'll look at before we get into the different dialects of quality time. Look with me in Deuteronomy chapter number 24. Deuteronomy chapter number 24. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Deuteronomy. Or it could be Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Depends on how picky you are. Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse number 5. Deuteronomy chapter 24 and verse number 5. Deuteronomy is in the very beginning. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I believe you. 24. And then verse number 5. "When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken." Now, that's a really good verse. You ought to get to know the person that you're married to. And the custom, at least with the Jews, the custom was that they would take 1 year apart and get to know one another. But I think it's interesting in this verse that it says, "and shall cheer up his wife which he hath taken." And so it's almost like a sadness for the woman to get married and a joy for the man to get married. So, just keep that in mind. When we're talking about quality time and being married, we ought to take some time, especially in the beginning of our marriages, where we're spending a lot of time with our spouse. That's not the time to shorten your honeymoon and get right back to work and then spend all your time at work. You need to spend the 40 hours at work, the number of hours that you need at work to survive, but then you need to be spending the rest of those hours in that week with your spouse. And so having some quality time. But again, I think the wording here is kind of funny that he needs to cheer up the wife. "I'm sorry I married you. Out of all the men in Israel, you got stuck with me." Um, I just think that wording is humorous here. But anyways, the concept in that verse is just taking time to get to know the one that you have chosen to marry, that you feel that God has led you to spend the rest of your life with. Now, let's look at some dialects. If you remember last week when we were talking about words of affirmation, there were certain dialects, subcategories underneath words of affirmation. That's what we're going to be looking at now. So under quality time, the first dialect or the first subcategory under that is quality conversation. And the importance there is listening. We're going to be looking at learning how to talk. And so this first part, quality conversation, is listening. And here's a quote from the book. It says, recent research has indicated that the average individual listens for only 17 seconds before interrupting. Only 17 seconds before interrupting. And so I feel like that I get 17 seconds in this. When I speak, I get 17 seconds, and then the rest of you just want to chime in and give me a piece of your mind. But research, again, has indicated that the average individual listens for only 17 seconds. How long does your wife talk to you? How long does your husband talk to you? Is it not usually longer than 17 seconds? Part of quality conversation, part of a quality communication, if you will, is learning to listen. This helped me out years ago, not just in my marriage, but in my ministry. And we're going to look at some verses that talk about this. But we need to listen to the whole matter before we jump in with what our thoughts are and interrupt. James chapter number 1 and verse 19. Let's take a look at some of these verses. James chapter 1 and verse 19. James chapter number 1 and verse 19. James chapter 1 and verse number 19. It says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. But in practical living, in our regular life, how are we? Aren't we slow to listen, swift to speak, and swift to wrath? But the Lord in His Word encourages us to be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. And so what we need to be are listeners. We need to be quality listeners. All right, go with me to Proverbs chapter 18. Proverbs chapter number 18. Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 13. Proverbs 18 and verse 13, he that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is folly and shame unto him. And so that verse really encourages us to be good listeners, does it not? You're in Proverbs 18. Go back a chapter to Proverbs 17 and verse 28. Proverbs 17 and verse 28. Even a fool, when he holdeth his peace, is counted wise, and he that shutteth his lips is esteemed a man of understanding. A man seems bright until he opens his lips. And so it's good for you to hold your peace. And then Ecclesiastes chapter number 5. So you're in Proverbs, go to the next book, Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter number 5. And verse number 1, Ecclesiastes chapter number 5 and verse number 1, keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God. And listen to this, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Verse 2, be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God, for God is in heaven, and thou upon earth, thereby let thy words be few. And so what we're seeing here is it's best for us to listen. Now, in the marriage relationship, when somebody is speaking, and now I'm speaking to guys now, all right? When your wife is speaking to you, how are you listening? How are you listening? Now, let me give you a couple of scenarios. Number one, are you looking at your phone and you're listening? Where's your attention? Number two, is the TV on, and you're watching the TV and you're trying to listen to her and it at the same time? How's your listening skills? Number three, and this is probably the most important one for men. Men, we listen to answer. We listen to fix. We come home from work. We come home from wherever. They come home from wherever. They get together and they start telling you the problems of the day. And already in your mind, you're formulating how you're going to fix your wife's problems. Now, again, I'm speaking to men. Women don't usually have that problem. Men, we're fixers. When we hear a problem, the first thing that we do, our mind starts working towards how we're going to fix that. And by the way, I'm guilty. When I start hearing things that flood into my mind are how you can fix what your issue is. I'm coming up, if I'm counseling with somebody, if I'm just speaking with somebody casually, I'm coming up with Bible verses to help you to fix your problem. But how am I listening now? I'm listening to fix. When probably your spouse, all they want is you to listen. They don't necessarily want you to speak back. All they want to do is see that you're paying attention and listening, and that's quality conversation, what we're talking about here. And so somebody with the love language of quality time is looking for a spouse that's going to spend time in quality listening. Then the second thing, along with quality listening, is learning to talk. Learning to talk. Now, how many of you in here are not really good at expressing your feelings? Well, I'm going to give you an excuse, and you can just point back. Pastor said this, and it was true, and so this is the reason why. But we need to get past it. Listen to what I wrote down that was actually in that book. Learning to talk. Many of us grew up in homes where expressions of thought and feelings was not encouraged, but condemned. To request a toy was to receive a lecture on the sad state of family finances. The child went away feeling guilty for having the desire, and he quickly learned not to express his desires. When he expressed anger, the parents responded with harsh and condemning words. Thus, the child learned that expressing angry feelings is not appropriate. If the child was made to feel guilty for expressing disappointment at not being able to go to the store with his father, he learned to hold his disappointment inside. By the time we reach adulthood, many of us have learned to deny our feelings. So by the time that we get into a marriage relationship, we've forgotten how to express our feelings. And I don't know if you have these conversations in your mind, but sometimes I'll have this conversation in my mind. When I want to express something to my wife, I'll have the whole conversation in my mind before I even say anything to her, and I already know what she's going to say. And so I have the conversation in my mind, but I never have the conversation outside of my mind. And then if I do express outside of my mind, I find out her response is totally different than what I came up with in my own mind. And really it stems back to how we were squashed when we were children, trying to express ideas. I remember getting the lecture, you think money grows on trees? Anybody ever hear that expression? Have any of you ever used that expression? You think money grows on trees? That's not how we talk to our brother. That's not how we respond to our sister. That's not how you respond back to me if we frustrated them to the point of anger. No, I don't want you to go to the store with me. You need to get ready to go to bed. Well, what does that do to the child? Is it really going to hurt him to go with you to the store? And so a lot of us that have problems expressing desires or expressing feelings or expressing really anything, ideas, we have problems doing that because we've learned to not talk. And so one of the dialects under quality time not only is quality listening in there, but learning to speak. We need to learn to talk, to speak up. And if this is you, and your love language is quality time, and you have a hard time expressing, or your spouse's love language is quality time, and you have a hard time expressing, there's an exercise that you can do. How many of you, let's just take a poll now. You're driving along in Tucson and somebody cuts you off and then slams on the brake. How do you feel? All right, so anger, frustration, right? All right, you're walking along in the grocery store and it's a whole wide aisle that you're walking down, but somebody is coming in your direction and they're walking so close to you that they bump into your shoulder. How do you feel about that? Anybody? So you guys are expressing your feelings now when you're responding to my questions, right? So the exercise is this. If you have a difficult time expressing your feelings to your spouse, then the exercise is take a notebook along with you. And every 3 hours, you're going to do this exercise every 3 hours. You're going to write down something that happened and the way you felt about it. You're going to write down, somebody cut me off, I was angry. Somebody was riding on my bumper. I'm frustrated. I wanted to pull over. I wanted to slam on my brakes. Write that feeling down. Somebody said a kind word to me. How did that make you feel? And do that every 3 hours. And so you just take a 3-hour time period. You go back and you look at that 3-hour time period and you write down an event and you write down how it felt. And so, in an 8-hour, 9-hour day, you would have 3 periods that you would do that. And then you would sit down afterwards and you would review that list and you would tell your spouse about your day. and you would just point out what you had on your exercise, on your notepad. Yeah, this morning I got cut off by someone that made me really mad. Yeah, I was walking down a grocery store aisle when you asked me to go get milk and somebody bumped right into me. We had the whole aisle. Of course, one of my favorites, one of my wife's favorites is when the whole family is in the grocery store. I'm talking about mom, dad, kid, grandma, aunt, uncle, the neighbor across the street, and they're all standing in the middle of the aisle, blocking the whole aisle so that you can't get by to get the one thing that you need. Well, how does that make you feel? I know how it makes my wife feel. And so you would go through your 3-hour time period, and you would share that with your spouse, and just that gets you in the mode of expressing your feelings. I got frustrated. I was angry. Somebody said a kind thing to me, and I was glad. I was happy. It lifted me up. Starbucks actually got my order right. They got my name right. That just lifted my whole day. That's the exercise for you to do. If quality time is your love language or quality time is your spouse's love language, and you have a hard time expressing that, learning to speak up. He goes into this next one, and this kind of goes along with what the two that we were just talking about. Are you the Dead Sea, or are you a babbling brook? You guys already kind of have an idea of where I'm going, aren't you? All right, you dead seers, men. Most of the time it's the man. You're receiving all of the input from your wife, and there's no exit, just like the Dead Sea. It gets fed, but there's no outlet, and that's why it's the Dead Sea. And so you're receiving, but you're never expressing. You don't speak. This person is satisfied with, and here's the illustration that he put in the book, and this is me to a T. I could drive from Chicago to Detroit and not say a word and be totally content. Now, what do you think the babbling brook is? That's what feeds the Dead Sea. Okay? Everything that the babbling brook sees, they talk about. Now, I'm going to nail you ladies. Most of the time, the Dead Sea is a man. Most of the time, the babbling brook is a woman. Now, not all the time, just most of the time. Oh, did you see that rock over there? That was a pretty rock. Oh, man, did you see that house over there? They painted that house. We're driving home, and my wife is noticing all of these things in the neighborhood, and I'm like, we live here. Don't care. That's not my house. She'll see, a neighbor painted their fence, or finally they got rid of that raggedy fence and they put up a block wall, or I can't believe they painted the house that color. Now, I can agree with that one. On a street coming to our house on Pomegranate, somebody painted it dark gray, like slate gray. Why would you paint a house in Tucson, Arizona, slate gray? Not in Tucson. To retain heat. Yeah, to attract heat. And then they had a for sale sign on there, like, you're never going to sell that. And so I would get details on our neighborhood as I'm going home. My wife and I were talking about this earlier. I was studying for this, and I knew she wasn't going to be out here. And I said, you remember when we would drive down into Mexico? This is before the internet, so we're talking way back in the year 2000. Okay? Cell phones weren't even big back then. They had the big brick phones, and only rich people had them. But when we drove into Mexico, we were required to have Mexican insurance on our vehicle. And there was only one company at the time called Sanborns. And Sanborns would provide you with a guide depending on the highway that you were taking from the United States down to whatever state or city you were going to, whatever highway you were on. They had kilometer by kilometer sites that you could see. Do you know how many kilometers there are between here and Aguascalientes, Mexico? Well, not even here, from not El Paso, from McAllen, Texas. It's an 8-hour drive. Do you know how many kilometers are in 8 hours? Well, if there's 0.6 in a mile, there was a bunch, and kilometer by kilometer, my wife would be reading from Sanborn's book and telling us, if you look over there, you'll see this cactus, and if you look over there, there's this rock, and if you squint your eye one certain way, it'll look like the Virgin Mary, and then if you the next kilometer, and it would be every single kilometer. And so she's reading from this book and telling us about it, and she didn't get to see anything because she was looking down at the book and reading the book to us. You know what we got for 8 hours? Input. I'm the Dead Sea. She's the babbling brook. We were laughing about that this afternoon. Exactly right. I mean, we're a perfect fit, you would think, right? She gets all the words in. I'm not even interested in speaking. But do you see how that could be a problem? It could be a problem because the Dead Sea person would get sick and tired of listening to the babbling brook person. And then the babbling brook person will come to a certain stage in their life and they'll be like, I don't even know this person. They never say anything. I don't even know who that is. And so there's a danger in that. And so we need to learn how to listen, but then we also need to learn how to speak in this. And so when we're talking about these dialects for quality time, the babbling brook needs to learn how to listen, and the Dead Sea needs to learn how to speak up. All right, and then the last dialect that we're going to look at under quality time is quality activities. Turn with me in your Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 3, and I think we looked at this one here recently. I think it was on Mother's Day we looked at this one. Quality activities, 1 Peter chapter 3. Men, how many of you like to go to plays? I don't. There's usually too many people. That's the issue. I don't have a problem with the performance. There's too many people. But men, how many of your spouses like to go to plays? Yeah, mine does. Man, how many of you like to do outdoor activities? I like to play golf. I like to shoot. Right? How many of your wives like to do that? Man, how many of your wives like to shop? And I mean the term shop till you drop. All right, how many of you like to do that? Have you ever seen the diagram of a man shopping and a woman shopping? Have you ever seen that diagram? So a man walks into Walmart, and the reason he's going to Walmart is to get milk. So the diagram for the man shopping to get milk is this. He walks in the front door, he walks back to the dairy section, he walks up to the self-checkout, he walks out the door. That's the diagram for a man shopping. You know what the diagram for a woman shopping? She's going there to get milk. Well, she's got to go down the fruits and vegetable aisle. She's got to go down the frozen aisle. She's got to go down through health and beauty. She's got to go through the women's clothes. She's got to go through the baby's clothes. She's got to go through the kitchen, the housewares. So her diagram looks like this, and finally she hits the milk, and then she's coming back, and then finally she hits the checkout. Man, how many of you, if you went with them, would that drive you crazy? You know you're going there for milk. And it takes you 35 minutes to get from the front door to the milk. But quality activities is whatever your spouse wants to do, you do it with them and you do it happily. You do it with interest. Now, that doesn't mean, guys, that you only do what she wants to do. There's got to be reciprocation here. She's got to do some of the things you want to do. You know, I told you I like to golf. My wife likes to go and drive the golf cart and look at the animals. She doesn't necessarily care about golfing. She's gone once or twice. She hits the ball 5 times to my 1. She'll hit the ball, it'll go to over to there, and then she'll walk up there, and she'll hit the ball again, it'll go right up over to there. And she'll hit the ball again, it'll go right up to over there. It's not very fun for her. But it's relaxing for me. And so I get out there and I hit my ball, and then she drives the cart over there. And by the way, it takes me maybe a couple of minutes to get to my ball because she sees a squirrel. The Fred Enke golf course, the one that I used to go to all the time, they have these cute little squirrels. They're just super short hair. They're almost super smooth. They're about that big, and they would lay down with their back legs sprayed out like this, and they'd have some kind of nut or something like this, and they're eating it like this with their back legs sprayed out like that. Cute. My wife would see that. We would stop. She'd take some pictures, and I'm looking at my ball. And she's here taking pictures, and she'd say, "Isn't that cute?" And you know what a good quality time person would say? "That is cute." And then she would hit the gas, and we'd get up to my ball. And then when we get up to my ball, there'd be a roadrunner going across. And so she would drop me. I would barely get my club out of my bag, and then she's zooming off after the roadrunner. But she's having a good time doing what I want to do. And we need to do the same thing. If they like to go shopping, guys, let me clue you in on this. And I hate to say this, but I have my wife trained. If I go shopping with her, I get a coffee. I get iced coffee. I get some kind of drink. It's a reward for me for going there. And so if we're going to go cruise around in a store, I get my coffee, I set it into the shopping cart, and I get to push the shopping cart behind her as she's cruising through the store. And my only interest is following her wherever she wants to go in the store. I have no goals. I have no expectations. Just to respond when she says, "What do you think about this?" The other day we went to the at-home store, and she wanted to know if I wanted the black one or the white one. I'm like, "I think the black one goes with all the stuff that we have." She got the white one because she liked the white one. She ended up going back and getting the black one. Or no, the other way around. No, there was only one black one, so she went back to get the black one. And so my only goal when we go to do stuff, and by the way, guys, suggest that. There have been some nights when I've said, "Hey, let's go over to Payway, and then after that, let's go walk dinner off over at the at-home store." That's a perfect date for my wife. "Hey, let's go cruise Target." As soon as we walk in the door, you know where I'm at? There's a Starbucks in there. I get my drink and set it in the cup holder, and I'm just cruising. No expectations. That's quality time. You like to go golfing or shooting or whatever. She doesn't necessarily like to do it. I've taken her over to Top Golf. They have those real comfortable couches there. They have servers that come, and they'll bring you drinks. And so my wife will get her water. I'll get her some chips. I'll get my drink, and I'm up there golfing at the Top Golf, and she's sitting there enjoying conversation, all of that, but they're with me. It's just spending quality time in quality activities. And by the way, guys, you have to look like you enjoy it. You have to sound like you enjoy it. It's not the doing of it. It's not the activity itself, but it's the time that you're spending with your spouse. That's the love language. So with quality time, there's got to be quality listening, there's got to be quality speaking, and then there's got to be quality activities. And so if your love language is quality time, that's what you're looking for. If your wife's or your spouse's love language is quality time, that's what she's looking for from you. All right? Questions or comments? Yes?
What was dialect number 2?
That learning